Hello, and welcome to Book Reviews Kill, a podcast about fantasy, sci-fi, and horror novels. I'm Evan.
And I'm Chad.
And you're joining us for our recap and discussion of Wrath, Book 4 in The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. The final book in The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. Chad, give me some of your thoughts.
All right, so first off, there is a few things that everyone would have died without that I just want to cover real fast. Two specifically. One is tunnels. Man, those giants really had some foresight when they built tunnels underneath every keep that they built, which is basically every historical significant keep and castle and landmark that we have a battle in or around. Our main characters would have died so many times if it was not for secret tunnels under every one of those bastards to help them get free at some point. And the other one, surprisingly, is our flapping friends, the crows.
The crows.
Really are clutch.
Who get way smarter with every book, I feel like.
Man, there's like a theme of, in my opinion, kind of unearned character growth, where they're just like, characters are not one thing in one book, and the next book they're like a world-renowned battle strategist leader. And the crows are like the perfect example, because they go from like kind of like parrot companions, able to like squawk out some like funny one-liners, to literally being able to like teach people about the history and like regurgitate word for word conversations, and they have personalities, and they really get personified hard and also save the day many times.
Yeah, I mean, like, this definitely felt like a last book in a series for sure.
Definitely.
Like it was you know, it's funny because each book is epic, but this was definitely the most epic. There were definitely, I felt like this was the most like vivid of all four books. You know what I mean? Like,
vivid is the right word.
Yeah, like I just felt like it was like the most confident of all four of them. It felt like I knew I could really see what was happening in this book, but like also I think it was just it was a lot more of a lot of what was happening in the books previous as well.
It's like, you liked battle, here's more.
Yeah, there is definitely, it is in here for sure. But I don't know, like I'm excited to kind of talk more about this, because like I feel like some of the characters wrapped up in a pretty satisfying way, and then others I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, yep, that's it, that's all of that then, I guess. Like to be totally fair, like that is kind of how it is for a lot of epic fantasy at the very end of a epic fantasy series. Like there are some characters, I feel like in almost all the ones that I've read, that just kind of like drop off and you're like not really ready for it. But that's just
totally
how it shakes down, and we just move on, and it's like it's so chaotic and it's just such a mess that it kind of works, and it like kind of makes sense. Like there were a couple characters, I mean, we can go into spoiler territory obviously because we're in the fourth book in this, but like wasn't expecting Gar at all. Like I don't know, I think it was just, I mean, maybe
to die, you mean?
Yeah, to die, but I wasn't expecting that. Like, and maybe like looking back, it's like, you know, he was like Corbin's like other father figure, like uncle, I guess, like kind of figure.
Parental figures very infrequently make it through these sort of
like if you're a parent in the world of the Faithful and the Fallen, your days are numbered for sure.
Yeah.
Like if you're any kind of authority figure to this, because I feel like all the young people kind of like survived. Well, not all of them.
Almost all of the old people died. You could say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this fourth one, I'm just kind of. You know, to be totally transparent, like I'm just kind of happy to be done with this series. Like I'm a little fatigued with all of it, but I will say, like the fourth one definitely felt like it was like the easiest one to read. You know,
yeah,
like because it felt like all right, here's what we're doing. Like let's go. You know, and it was the pedal was just all the way to the metal.
Oh, we were flooring it without any rests.
Yeah, I think I read this the fastest out of all three of these actually.
Same, yeah, and a few things kind of went towards that feeling of like, this is an ending book. Like we had just, I mean, the second half, I think there's like 35 chapters of the end of this book that is just one large battle. I mean, it ebbs and it flows, and there's, you know, different groups and different like clashes within it, but it's basically one solid battle, which is really exciting. His blocking, his battles are always good, and they've only gotten better. This one was especially excellent, which I would have been honestly really, really disappointed if we didn't culminate and end with like an awesome flexing of John Gwynne's most potent skill as an author, which is just his battles and kind of getting you engaged in them. And I feel what you were saying, where there's kind of like a suddenness to a lot of the wrapping up of like, oh, when that person's dead and that person's happy and sailing into the sunset. Okay, and it's just, but I don't know how else you would do it with such a enormous cast. You just kind of have to.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
like you got to do it. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, yeah, things kind of come to a point where it's just like, okay, something has to be done here.
Right. I do think that this is John Gwynn's best piece of writing. Just like as a
I made a
writer,
note
you
of that
can really
too.
see his
Yeah,
progression from like the beginning first one to this one. It's just cleaner, it's better. There's still way too many characters. And yeah, I'm sure some of it is like due to my familiarity is increased with each one of the
sure.
characters, but it's not just that. He's a better writer by book 4,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's funny. I totally made a note for this because I don't think that writing was ever bad at all, but
No.
it was definitely like a little clunky sometimes and just felt a little bit like, oh, that was kind of a weirdly structured sentence. And like that was a weird paragraph and weird way to describe, just like small little nitpicky things. But then with this, I felt like the dialogue was a lot snappier. We were like kind of like just engaging in scenes like a lot more efficiently.
Yep.
And so like, I don't know. I just think
Started at
that,
the right time.
yeah, like
Like you
it
got that.
so like we're gonna get into the recap here real quick, but before that, I just want to say like I feel like Wrath, like I didn't totally love all the things that actually happened, and like some stuff just didn't make a bunch of sense to me.
Same.
But I will say that like this book, like reading this book, has made me more excited to read more John Gwynne in the future. Especially the Bloodsworns trilogy. I don't think I'm gonna read the other series that takes place in the Banished Lands. Maybe it's good, like maybe it's solid, but yeah, I think that Wrath definitely. It's not even my. I think Malice is my favorite out of all four of them personally.
What's your order?
I think I would put. I didn't really think there was a ton of, but I think Malice, Valor, Wrath, and then Ruin. So it'd be like book 1 was my favorite, book 2 was my second favorite, and then book 4 was my third favorite, and book 3 was my least favorite. I almost wanted to stop after book 3. Like, except for that end, the very, very end of book 3, I was like, oh, okay, you
Yeah.
got me, John Gwynne. Like, okay, I'll keep reading
Yeah.
this. What about you?
I would say I almost want to give it a clean, just like 4-3-2-1, but like
Hmm.
it's 4-3-2 or 1. I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
I liked 1, but I mean, I struggled so much with 1 just because there's so much character. There's so
Yeah,
many
yeah.
characters, and if there's anything that I have to say that's like, in my opinion, like bad about these books is just like the approach on telling this story and via so many eyes was confusing. It didn't really help the story. The one thing it did help was understanding the fullness of a battle, so you can kind of have this camera that floats from one person, one side, one character to the other, and you understand that character and position, motivations, kind of why they're in this battle and what they're trying to accomplish really well. But besides that really cool feature of having so many characters, it was just cumbersome,
Yeah.
and it didn't help that so many of them shared their names. So yeah, I would say 1 and 2 are about even for me, and then 3 we get a pretty, in my opinion, a pretty big chunk forward as far as like, yeah, I loved this into Ruin, and then a way larger chunk forward into I really like this into Wrath.
Yeah, I mean, I think with 1, I think the reason I liked 1 so much was because there were fewer POVs. I mean, it was really just Corbin, Kywin. I think Camlin had some, Veratus and Castell and Evnis, and I'm pretty sure that's it. Like, I
Yeah, I
could be
think so, which is
wrong,
weird that
but
Castell
I
way
know
back in
because
the
he
day
dies
like
in the
has,
very. It's
yeah,
so funny because he
he
just
gets kind of
dies.
swapped with
But
McKean.
honestly, like, and like Castell dying at the end of the first book is really like a good showcase of like why Gwyn kind of works so for a lot of people, and like why Gwyn, it seems like he does a very good job at kind of like taking some tropes and saying, okay, like what can we do with these tropes, and like let's subvert a few things, like let's do a couple. I mean, even in Wrath, like this last book, I was still, even though I was kind of fatigued with some of the just general throat slitting and spears through the gut and like all, you know what I mean, like all that kind of stuff, like
Totally.
I was still surprised sometimes and still kind of like, oh, all right, that's an interesting choice, like, which is cool. I like when that happens when I'm reading. And I think that Castell dying was a very good kind of like precursor almost. It was like, get ready for this because I'm going to do this kind of like, nobody's super safe except for my antagonist, which I will get into later. But like, there's definitely like he definitely seems kind of biased towards his villains. You know what I mean? Like, there's just
Totally.
there's a lot of moments where it's just like, oh, thought guy was dead, but
Yeah, like JL, the betrayer. Man, that guy just he was like the Ark of the Scythe guy, Goddard when it comes to
yeah,
killing
just
people.
love killing.
JL just loved betray, dude. He was just betraying everybody. Like at the very end, like the last like 20 minutes that he's alive, he like has you think like there's no way this guy can betray like another person on his side. And he like sees like the king who was like kind of made fun of him after his defeat at Drassel at the last book when he kind of arrived like scraggly and defeated with his group of guys all covered in dirt. And he like makes fun of him for being dirty and defeated. And he sees him like struggling as he's like running away from McKean on the ground. And he's like, help me. And he's like, screw this guy. He knifes him and kills him. It's like, wow, JL managed to put one more up on the board as far as betraying your friends.
I mean, at least we got a consistent character here.
There's many times during these books that people are about to die. Rin's about to knife Corbin and the door breaks open, and he gets saved. JL's about to be killed by McKean multiple times and he gets saved by insert random person who intercepts McKean's blade,
At one point, a very random person.
Yeah.
Let's get into the recap.
Okay, let's do it. The book begins with Veratus and Alcyone gasping as they crawl up the side of a river. Alcyone, upon reaching the safety of the bank, thanks Veratus, explaining he has been both magically controlled by Calidus, who had created a little Alcyone voodoo effigy he used to control him, much like the one Calidus made for Lycos to control Philae, as well as keeping Alcyon's wife and child as his captive. And now, because Veratus released his wife and child, as well as accidentally destroying the effigy, Alcyone finds himself free at long last, and eternally grateful to Veratus. He tells him that he has been under Calidus' influence for 16 years. Calidus is sure to be enraged, and most certainly has sent men in pursuit of them. A desperate run ensues, ending with Veratus and Alcyone forced to turn and fight their pursuers, on the brink of being overwhelmed. As they scream their defiant last, surrounded by attacking Katashim, Krellis, Veratus' brother, and 15 or so of his men join the fight and beat off the attacking Katashim. Veratus and Alcyone manage to get free of Calidus' clutches. During a dream where Corbin once again finds himself in the spirit realm, he is captured by a morally questionable character named Viathan, who casually mentions consuming Corbin's soul many times, saying that he is Viathan, the Eater of Souls. Corbin is saved by Ben Elim, who swoop in, and he is taken to Michael, who tells him about Calidus' attack and how Drassel has been taken. Though he does reassure Corbin that Gar led a successful escape from the tunnels, and while some of his army has been slain, others taken as captive, many were able to get away and still live. Corlin and company set off to find what happened to Corbin and comes across a barely alive Storm. Brenna takes Storm into her care and begins nursing her back to health. They discover giant tracks leading away from the site and begin pursuing them, correctly assuming that they are the ones who captured Corbin. McKean and Philae and the others who fought off Rin's forces at the end of the last book decide to leave their swamp, agreeing that they will be more useful in the forest, attacking the weakly guarded enemy forces who are busy constructing a road to Drassel. They meet up with Veratus and Krellis and the assortment of men with them. Together they attack. McKean sees JL escaping out the back, and after a merry chase, JL turns to meet him. McKean is overcome with hatred and takes his time playing with JL, who is wildly outmatched. JL is confident at first, knowing himself to be younger and faster, but he has no idea that McKean has been mastering his bloody craft in the Vinthalan fighting pits, and is a finely honed killing machine. McKean easily defeats JL. JL, left with no one to betray as he lays on his back, closes his eyes waiting for McKean's killing blow. But one of his men intercepts McKean, and JL manages to stand and flee the field, promising himself to rally men and come back and get his revenge, no doubt after lying and betraying his way into a leadership position of another army. As fate would have it, during the melee, JL would be besieged by a fallen Gondel, king of Carnarvon, a supposed ally to assist him. But JL recalls how the unblooded, arrogant young king scorned him, making fun of JL for running and arriving at his camp with his ragged bunch, bloody, dirty, and defeated after his recent loss at Drassel. Never one to let a good betrayal pass, JL stabs his ally king in the face, fulfilling JL's lust for betraying one of his own, temporarily at least. McKean manages to overtake JL, pursuing him relentlessly, but not before JL manages to get Philae under his control, and he uses her to keep McKean from attacking him. McKean lays down his weapons and tells JL to let her go. He will fight him without any weapons, while JL can keep his. Fidelet makes it to safety, and Makeen growls, "For Castel," as he advances on Jael. A revenge-fueled bloodlust overtakes him. Makeen tears him to pieces, ripping Jael's weapon from him. He breaks his arm and picks up one of Jael's knives, and Private Ryan style slowly sinks it into the soft underbelly of Jael's chin, the whole time repeating, "For Castel." Jael, the betrayer, dies no better than he lived, pathetic, groveling, and ready to betray his allies at a moment's notice. Cohen has been taken captive by Calidus during his surprise attack on Drasil and is being held with many other prisoners. Cohen and the others are forced to watch every morning as Calidus, or one of his vile Kadashim, slowly impale a prisoner alive on a stake, Calidus proclaiming that the staking will continue every day that Corbin still walks free. Makeen manages to oversee some Vinthalan being attacked and joins the attackers with his men. He finds out with joy that his old shield brother Tahir, his last living sword brother from the Gadrai, is alive and part of the force he and his men just helped win a battle. They have giants with them, and we get to see an inspiring moment as two clans, Alcyons and the giants with the other group, with Makeen's friends, have had a long and deep hatred between them, and with a touching move of cultural growth, they agree they will not kill each other and give working together a shot. Wraith is feeling wonderful after drinking from the mysterious cup he found in the swamp, and being unconscious for a 10-day, he wakes up with a new awareness of his surroundings and clearly heightened senses, and most likely reflexes and strength at the very least, though he doesn't appear to be wondering or even testing his new abilities and takes them remarkably in stride. Creepy old Queen Rin certainly takes note of him and begins casting him questionable and suggestive glances. Corbin is finally taken before the king of the giant clan that has captured him. There he plays his hand, revealing his true identity and imploring the wizened giant king with thousands of bear-riding warriors to command to join him in his cause and help prevent Azeroth the enemy from coming into this land and destroying all that is good and holy. Though his words are heard and briefly considered, the giant king quickly rules that Corbin is to be taken into the Desolation Lands, far, far away, and quietly killed, and his body is to be hidden and buried in a pit. No one must know, should this turn other groups for or against them. As Corbin is being taken away, he realizes that the Giant King is in possession of the Starstone Dagger, and yells, telling the king that Calidus will never rest. There is no land too far that he will be able to take his clan, that Calidus will not follow for that dagger. Clearly under the golem-like one-ring powers the Starstone's treasures seem to possess, the Giant King snarls that it is his and no one will ever get it. Corbin is taken outside by the giant, whose brother he had recently slain, and grabs a practice iron sword, thinking that this is as good a time as any should his fate be to go down. He wants it to be on his own terms with a sword, or as close to one as possible. Just as he is about to close with the giant, Gar comes striding into camp, sword held high, screaming a giant challenge to any who will hear. Everything comes to a halt. Coralyn has used this distraction as a chance to gain footing on the giant's wall and manages to slip over it while everyone is distracted, with Corbin and Gar below. They're quickly joined by an equally discreet Dath. Gar's challenge is accepted, and the giants who still follow the old ways circle up and agree to let Gar leave should he win. But when asked if his victory can include Corbin's freedom, he is denied. Gar is able to defeat the giant, and though the giant sees Corbin escaping and do their best to prevent their prisoner from getting away, Gar, Coralyn, Dath, and the company of others that were with them manage to get away. Veratus leads a tricky assault to free the captives in Drasil by dressing up a bunch of men as eagle guards and gaining entry into the front of Drasil, while Alcyon leads a distraction assault on the back. Veratus and Cohen briefly find each other during the melee as Veratus is quickly discovered by a small group of Kadashim, who manage to separate the captives. Veratus, though it pains him to leave there without knowing the fate of Cohen, is forced to lead his prisoner group and men free. Cohen manages to lead her group into some tunnels beneath the giant-made tree fort. As even the fort that is a tree fort, the giants were sure to add extensive tunnels leading in and out of the fortress beneath them. Both groups get free and manage to escape with their lives. Calidus discovers a secret room in Drasil that has marked the location of the Starstone treasures, and sends Lycos off to find the Torque, hidden on an island, many leagues away in a lake close to where Alcyon grew up. Fidelay decides to take some men and pursue Nether, thinking that if she can just talk with her son, she can get him back on the side of the good. So after putting a sleeping pill in Makeen's drink one night, she slinks off, some of her men in tow, and immediately gets her men killed and herself taken captive by Lycos. Makeen discovers this and sets off after them. This arc culminates in Lycos discovering a giant community living in a cave on this island, and using his Kadashim, he is able to defeat many and get the Torque. Makin shows up in the middle of their fight and aids the giants. Lycos escapes with the torque but leverages Fidelay to escape, instructing Makin to slit his own wrists or watch Fidelay get thrown over a cliff as he is holding her by the scruff of her neck over the side of one. Fidelay pulls away from Lycos and throws herself over the cliff. Lycos then escapes as Legion, one of the Kadashim, prevents Makin from pursuing him. Makin defeats Legion and throws his head after Lycos, which splashes down next to him as he frantically rows away, Fidelay's crumpled, dead corpse lying on the side of the river. After many skirmishes, battles won and battles lost, the book culminates in a series of battles. Nether is defeated, having most of his army, en route to Drasil, being eaten by ants that were fleeing a deliberately lit fire. He and his remaining men get in sight of Drasil, and now, being bolstered by reinforcements sent out of Drasil by Calidus, are fighting anew. Their army, though wildly reduced, has now been reinforced by Calidus's army coming out of Drasil, and now, once again, outnumber the forces of good. Though the majority of the goodly forces are committed to the battle in front of Drasil, this is just a distraction, and Cohen leads Corbin and a small company of others into the tunnels she used to escape Drasil earlier in the book. Their plan is to destroy the Starstone treasures in the cauldron, bringing the ones they have with them and knowing that Calidus has the rest along with the cauldron, which they need to destroy them in the keep as well. Their plan seems to go swimmingly as they make it all the way to the room containing the treasures and destroy the guard of Kadashim there. They begin the ritual to destroy the Starstone treasures when Calidus springs his own trap. Being one step ahead of them as usual, he is ready for them and they are quickly dispatched, and forced to watch as Calidus kills Brenna and finishes the ritual. A scream of ecstasy is heard as a portal between the spirit and mortal realm is forced open, Kadashim streaming through by the hundreds, then the thousands. The sky blackens with them. Corbin falls into himself, hearing a calling from Michael from the spirit realm. He appears in the spirit realm and frees Michael, telling him that the portal is open. Michael explains to him that this, the portal being opened, was the Ben Elim's plan from the beginning, so they could come through and defeat the Kadashim and live on side by side with Elion's favored creation and protect them, living in their own realm for all time. Azeroth himself makes an appearance, and he and his Kadashim take wing and begin decimating the goodly forces outside of Drasil. All seems lost, Corbin and his crew still captured, Brenna dead, and their forces outside quickly being reduced to nothing. But then a new fluttering is heard from the portal, and Ben Elim, by their thousands, begin emerging, immediately setting upon the Kadashim. Michael and Azeroth struggle together, and is able to distract Azeroth and the Kadashim from Cohen, who is doing her best to complete the ritual that will destroy the Starstone treasures. She just barely manages it, and as the last treasure is consumed by the cauldron, Azeroth and Michael are frozen in place, their struggle doomed to be an eternal one before the broken treasures, as they are now turned into statues. The portal has now been sealed. The Ben Elim help the forces of good turn the tide of the battle and scatter the Kadashim and Calidus' army. During the battle, both sides have taken great casualties. Calidus is dead, as well as Makin, who before he was slain hunted down Lycos and got his revenge upon him, pinning him to a tree with knives and watching coldly as a few ants eat him alive before succumbing to his own wounds and dying himself. The book ends with the war-torn land agreeing to work together to rebuild and repair. The Ben Elim attempt to elect Corbin as their battle chief, and ask for his help hunting down the now scattered Kadashim. Corbin says no, as he is tired of them controlling his life, and the book ends with him leading a small group off to restart at Grant's Hold, hoping to create a school that joins all the different warriors' styles and combat techniques to train the next generation of warriors in the martial arts and help the forces of good fight evil for all time. Much has been lost, but much is still alive to be rebuilt, and hope lives on. Though many do not live on.
Many people did not live on at all.
Many people did not live on.
Speaking of people not living on, I'd really like to start off our conversation here with what I think is one of the more interesting parts of the whole series, that like it ended okay, but like I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on it, and I've talked at length about these two people in pretty much every one of these episodes, but Nether and Veratus. I have mixed feelings on like how that all ended up. What are your thoughts on Nether and Veratus?
Okay, I liked their struggle of characters up to them. I really liked Veratus. Like Nether was one of the most interesting characters for the first two books.
For a little bit, yeah.
Super interesting. And then as soon as he learns that he's like actually the Dark Star and he's like a bad guy and then just accepts it. And he's like, oh, whatever. It's like he just kind of accepts being bad and then loses kind of like all of my interest. He's no longer dynamic and interesting. He's just like a bad guy and knows it. Veratus, though, he manages to kind of keep my interest as he's totally faithful. He's like got a good heart the entire time. As soon as he learns this, he turns on Nether, starts working for Corbin, and kind of makes up to that side of things. And then they kind of, I don't know, Nether was just, he was not my favorite like war leader, or he was just kind of all of his power and interest was, he was just another general to me by the end of the book, who the Veratus kind of faces off and is like, hey, you sure that you want to be evil? And he was like, meh, 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 I'm still petty, and then like tries to attack him, and then he kills him. And it was just like, I don't know, it was a little anticlimactic, I'll call it that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, really. Like, I mean, because Nether was like complex for a little while, and then I think he kind of lost some of his complexity, and like, and it kind of just points to another thing with this series that, I don't know, it's kind of bugged me a little bit, that like just the bad people are bad and the good people are good, and there's really no
even
arcs
Veratus.
or like no, and that's the thing, is like Veratus is another character who seemed complex, but it's actually not at all. He was put into a complicated situation, but him as a character, like it's just like, I feel like all the characters are kind of on rails, you know, and like the story changes a little bit, but like the characters are they're gonna do what they're gonna do and feel how they're gonna feel no matter what. And it's just like, I don't know, it just doesn't make for like very compelling stories, and then the endings is just kind of like, oh, all right, well, I mean, I'm not trying to rewrite the book or anything, try not to do that on this podcast, but I do think it would have been more interesting if Nether had kind of, you know, thought about his situation a little bit more, and like been a little bit more conflicted about it. Yeah, or
and like, actually had a conversation. That would have been an interesting conversation. It would have like reflamed my interest into Nether, and him being like, oh man, struggle, maybe I shouldn't. And then like, you know, he could get tortured by Calidus after he tries to go good or something, you know, and then decides to commit to bad again.
Yeah, I mean, like I said in the episode previous, like specifically with regard to Nether, like, yeah, I mean, it is kind of built up that he does want a certain amount of power for good, and I liked that, but it's like, at this point, it's like, dude, do you honestly think that like these like demons are gonna get you there? Like I feel like he just kind of fell off a cliff a little bit, you know?
Totally, he just gets used as a tool of Calidus.
That's the thing, though, is like Gwynne paints such a vivid picture sometimes with some scenes where it's like, I'm like really caught up in the moment sometimes, and I'm like, awesome, and then I like think about it a little bit more, and I'm like, wait, that was a little lame though. Like, but it's just, but like in the moment, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh, this is crazy. Like this is like, this is crazy. And then it's just like with a little bit more thought, I'm like, wait, well, like the fair was kind of whatever.
I would say that the only, and I think this is a direct result of there just being too many characters. None of them were bad, like you were saying. I totally agree with you. Some of them are undynamic and maybe just a little bit boring. But honestly, we didn't have time for them to be any more interesting because we didn't spend enough time with characters, each one as is, let alone for them to be like more complicated and less simple, you know, because it would just, I don't think, you know, this story would have been aided at all with more time with the same amount of characters. If we had less characters, like the same length of books, but just longer chunks with certain characters, that would have aided the story a lot. But it was just watered down. So I felt like the real big feels were told to me and not felt by me.
Yeah, I mean, like what would have worked, kind of like with I know you never read the Last Wheel of Time book, but in the Last Wheel of Time book, not trying to spoil anything, but like it bounces around so much. Like it's just like there's page breaks on so many of the pages. Way? No, in a really good way, because like you were spending whole entire like 14, 15 page chapters with characters for like the entire series, and then in the last book, it's like boom, 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 and it like really ratchets up the intensity and the pace in the last book. And so these characters you spent so much time with and really gotten to know, now you turn up the volume and like turn up the pace and like make these like really punchy like one page, like you know, they weren't chapters, but they were like page breaks.
Totally.
It would be like Egwene, and then like, oh, now we're way over here with Lan, and like now we're way over here with Rand, and now we're way over here with Matt, and like, but it was all like contained in like these small sections of like physical pages, you know. And I think that with Wrath, I kind of got that feeling again, where it was just like over here, over here, over here, and it was really exciting. But at the same time, I didn't feel like I was connected with these characters, and it was still exciting
No,
for sure, but
totally.
it just didn't have. No, granted, no, to be totally fair, Wheel of Time is 14 books long. So
Right. This is
I
four.
just,
Yeah.
I just, but I am talking about like, I do think that Jordan though spent a little bit more time when he was with a POV with that POV.
100%. In
So
fact,
that's
one
just
could argue the opposite problem in the Wheel of Time, right? It was like too much time with
maybe,
each one of
yeah.
these
There's
character
a
arcs.
lot of smoothing of skirts and a lot of folding, crossing arms under breasts, and like
well said.
a lot of tugging at braids and stuff. Like yeah,
Yeah, but you know, it's funny to complain about these books being so complicated when like really they're not. They're like very pretty
no,
simple. There's just so many things happening at the same time. And like
yeah.
I think the really
I mean,
there could have been
it's a war.
yeah,
Like I mean,
it's a war thing.
it's an
There could have been
Armageddon
some
situation.
cooler
Like,
dynamic endings though, right? Because like every bad guy just
yeah.
ends with like the only thing that we get kind of clever about a bad guy's ending is not necessarily the choices that they make at the ending. It's just like the way that they're defeated, which is like being eaten by ants, which is really cool, but like horrific, you know?
Well, I mean, I think that the way
They're
the jail went
satisfying.
out, the way the jail went
Revenge.
out was like pretty satisfying, actually.
Yeah.
Like like saying Castell's name over and over, like that's pretty
Just
badass.
slowly
Like that,
sinking
yeah,
his
that's
own
like
dagger underneath his
yeah.
chin.
I do want to ask you another question though, and this is probably my most like single eyebrow raised at the book like thing, but like McKean and Fidelay.
They got done dirty.
I don't think I've ever read two characters that I liked reading, but also felt so like those chapters felt so weird and like contrived and lopsided, and like it was like the characters were so cool, but the things that they were actually doing and the things that were happening to them, I was like, what the hell is going on right now? Like this is such a mess. Like
They were a little all over the place. And like John Gwynne kind of has a weird reoccurring stylistic choice of having one character do the same thing over and over and over again in different books and different settings. Like Fidelay, every time she's like, no, we must stand and fight, or we must go rush off and fight, is like that is precursor to her getting captured like every time. Like she's like, I need to go. I feel useless back here at the back of the line. She rushes into battle, immediately gets captured by JL with a knife held to her neck, and McKean's like, oh man, I was you know. Though I will say she's pretty badass in that she manages to like break his nose by like slamming her head back into his to like get away. So she fixes that one on her own. But when I really was like, oh, Fidelay, come on, that I was like
she
actually
drugged
kind of
McKean.
disappointed. Yeah, when she
When
drugged him, I was
I
like,
knew you were
man,
gonna say that.
like that. All that
Yeah.
guy wants to do is the opportunity to die for you. Like he wants to die. That would be the best out for him, you know. And
Yeah.
like, don't take that away from him. Come on, let him at least die for you, as opposed to finding your men all defeated like half a
Yeah.
night later because he's stumbling through the woods trying to find you, only to find out that once again you have fallen into Lycos's clutches.
It just seemed like kind of a dumb thing to do.
It was
Like,
super
it was just,
dumb.
It's just
And like very naivete. She had a high level of naivete. Trying to really get that word right.
you're doing a great job, buddy.
Thank you. Thinking that Nether could come back, you know, like come on.
One of the things that I know like kind of like annoys readers a lot. I don't mind it too much, but I know I've seen this is like one of the biggest complaints that a lot of readers have about books and stories and characters and stuff is like when a character makes a really stupid decision and you can kind of tell that stupid decision was like, it's like you want to give most authors the benefit of the doubt, but then also sometimes it's like Corbin going out for some air. You know what I mean? It's just like,
right.
Really? Like that's a stupid decision. And it's like we could go all day and just talk about like how, well, you know, like that battle was already won and like he didn't think anybody was that close, so like whatever. You know what I mean? But
Right.
But like also you shouldn't go out for air when you've just had like that's silly. And it seemed like it was like, how do we get Corbin out in the open so he can get
Right.
captured? You know, and like that kind of stuff doesn't usually bother me that much, but I can understand why when readers are reading this kind of stuff, and I kind of got that same feeling with Fidelay drugging McKean too, where it's just kind of like this, like I guess you could kind of justify why this happens, but also like it feels so dumb, you know, like
Yep.
like it sets it up for like the sequence that happens, and but it's funny when you say that. It's like, yeah, it does set it up for the sequence of events that happens later, but it's like that's what all writing is. You know what I mean? It's like writing things down because they're going to have a consequence later. So it's like it is. I understand that it is kind of like a
Yeah, this
balance.
feels like a weird, like repeated math equation where
Yeah,
it's like two
yeah.
plus two equals four. Like once again, Cohen is devout in her post of being like really only being good for like being captured and just allowed limited movement and freedom weirdly within the enemy's camp. So we can continue using her for the sole purpose of like getting a window into the enemy's camp from like a good guy's perspective. Like that is Cohen's purpose throughout the course of these books. Get
Why
captured.
didn't they just kill Cohen? Like, did they need
I thought she
Cohen?
would have
Like,
been no, Cohen lives.
no, I know that, but I meant in the beginning when Cohen is captured,
Oh,
and they're
so
like
they
watching those people get impaled and
yeah,
stuff, and
one of
like,
the they keep trying to. One of the Kadashim like wants to spike her, but Calidus keeps preventing them, being like, no, we might be able to use her as like bait for Corbin.
I think my eyes
He's kind of
glazed
like
over
keeps
at
her
that
as like a,
part.
and then it's kind of like
Because Calidus was like really determined to get Corbin.
yeah. He, like every morning he yells a challenge to Corbin, like "You coward! Another person's getting staked because you won't face me." And then like we get the screams of some poor guy getting staked, or girl.
Yeah, that was brutal. Man, it's funny because like in Dark Age, there's people being impaled too. So that was just
Oh,
like a
really?
lot. Yeah, yeah. Remember, don't you remember? It was like a very small part of the chapter. It was like one of the Mercury people.
There's some staking going on.
The Ash Lord. Wait, no, not the Ash Lord. Wow, I'm butchering that so hard. Sorry, listeners. This is a total tangent. But in Dark Age, there's a part where people are being impaled, and then when I was reading this, I was like, oh, more people being impaled. Like, holy shit! Like this is
Yeah,
okay
a
then.
lot of impaling.
Like,
It's a terrible way to go.
yeah, probably the worst. Well, probably not. We could go on about that for a while, but
So there's a few things in these books that like are very convenient, and I know that that's like in every fantasy novel, and in the past I've kind of like wrote them off by being like, yeah, well, like stories don't get written about the ones where like crazy things don't happen. And while I totally stand by that statement, and that's a great like way to justify kind of like wildly coincidental things happening in books, it's very coincidental in this book. Like the two ones that really come to mind is regarding the Starstone treasures. So at the end of the third book, the jail is it jail? No, it's Wraith. Wraith is Wraith or Wraith. Wraith is
Rafe
walking
with an
through.
F. Yeah,
I
like
think
R
it's
A
Wraith
F E.
with the TH. I could be wrong. I don't know. One
I
of the
think it's
two Wraiths.
RAFE.
There is a Wraith also, though.
There's a Braith with a B.
Yeah, and then there's a Wraith and a Wraith.
Oh my god, you're go on.
But it might
Sorry.
be Wraith.
No.
One of the Wraiths finds a Starstone treasure just by like stumbling through a bog, and then like
Yeah.
comes across like a sealed box that has like the goblet in it, and he drinks out of it, goes into a coma, and like wakes up like feeling great 10 days later. That's very convenient. And then the next one is when Calidus is like in a rage inside of Drasil about midway through this last book, Wraith. Wraith. Now I'm all confused. Wrath through this last book, Wrath. He goes into like the like war room of Drasil and like flips a table and like throws a spear. And this whole time he's been searching the all of Drasil to trying to find like a hidden room supposedly that's in there where like the Starstone treasures were actually forged, and there might be like some hints as to where the rest of them are hidden. I think they only have the torque to find at this point. And by flipping the table and throwing the spear out of anger, that like releases somehow the hidden catch, and like this like door opens and they go up, and sure enough on the wall is like a big map of like where they hid all the Starstone treasures originally. You're like, okay, whatever, sure. And that's neither here nor there. I just kind of wanted to throw it out as like, I've got an eyebrow arched in that very convenient direction. One thing I do have a question for you on is I want your opinion on Corbin's incessant honesty. Okay, so Corbin learns at the end of the last book that like he is in fact not the Saren Disclayer, and Michael just made that all up, which really doesn't get resolved in any way in this book. Like it doesn't even really get mentioned beyond my question to you here, which is as soon as Corbin gets freed from the Giantings and re-meets up with his people, he doesn't like get a little group of people and he's like, hey guys, like that one thing holding all of our army together, like everyone believing me the Saren Disclayer, like should I tell everyone that? Because that's like literally the glue, like everyone's motivation for keeping going. And like people can do a lot of things if they believe that they can do them, if like there's a divine intervention element that they kind of have as like their fuel for their fire, that's like, but we know because of prophecies and gods that the good guys win. And Corbin, without consulting anybody upon getting back to camp, like gets up on a box and he's like, hey everybody, I am not the Saren Disclayer. it was all a lie. There's like no reason that we are out here. There's no divine. Basically removing, in my opinion, the glue holding them all together. And like, do you think that was a smart move, or should he like continue the lie going? It ends up working out for him, obviously, but like besides that,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's hard in hindsight since things did work out to say whether or not it was like
totally. I mean, the scene literally ends with everyone being like, "Saren Disclair, so like, we don't care," you know.
I think that Corbin's the kind of character who I think he's written in such a way, and we're supposed to read him in such a way that like he, having known the truth, couldn't keep doing what he was doing because it would have felt like a betrayal to
okay, that makes sense to me.
Like that's kind of how I like, because Corbin is just like, he reminds me of like Aragon, kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like kind of an idiot with his like morally
just kind of, he's like this book's like Captain America, you know what I mean?
Totally. Someone's like, are there Jews hiding in your basement? He's like, can't tell a lie. Yup. You're like, dude, come on, man. Like,
I think Corbin, I don't know, that it kind of rounded him out a little bit. Like, it didn't make him like that much more interesting. He's never been that interesting, but I don't know. He could have it could have been a thing that wasn't acknowledged to the masses, or to the, not the masses, but like the people that were following him. But I think that it did kind of like, I don't know, it pushed his character along a little bit, like kind of solidified how he acts and deals with stuff.
And it did actually end pretty emotional with everyone being like, yeah, but like that doesn't change the fact that like all of our homes have been destroyed by the forces of evil, and like we're still like, that doesn't change really anything besides the like we lost this kind of like hidden motivation that was kind of like esoteric and like maybe where there's a destiny at play here. It was just like, yeah, that all went away, but like everything else, like the reality of the situation hasn't changed at all. And it was like actually a pretty emotional like moment where everyone was still like, we're behind you, Corbin.
I liked it. It was like King in the North kind of thing.
Yeah, it was very,
you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the vibe that I got from it. Because I mean, also like Robb Stark in Song of Ice and Fire is like, he's so young that like a lot of the Northerners like don't take him super seriously until he's kind of like proved himself a little bit. And once he's like proved himself, like and I'm talking about Song of Ice and Fire here, obviously, but like if they had like supported him, if the Northern houses had supported him just because he was Eddard Stark's son, that wouldn't have made like a ton of sense. But like them, in spite of him being super young, going with him anyway because of how he's conducted himself. That was just kind of like the same vibe I got with like Corbin, where it was like yeah, like they might have just followed him for the Saren Disclair thing maybe initially, but he's proved his mettle at this point. And like you said earlier, it's like it doesn't actually really change anything, you know what I mean? Or at least in hindsight it doesn't, because like Elion doesn't even show up, which I kind of wanted to ask you about that as well. Whoa, that was okay. There's like two things that are weird, like the Elion not showing up at all. I was like, that's weird. And then also
the entire series,
and then Azeroth and Michael like turning into statues. Like weird call. Not expected. That was one of those moments where I was like, okay,
all right, sure.
Like they're fighting each other forever. Like this seems like an issue between Michael and Azeroth, not Elion and Azeroth.
Yeah, the two things about this book that are like, in my opinion, just don't aid the story in any way, and in fact remove quite a bit from it, are, as mentioned, the extreme amount of point of view characters, and then this whole Michael made up the Saren Disclair thing, and so it like throws Corbin into this weird like, so it's all for nothing, it's all lies, like why did you even do this? And then it would have been totally fine. I don't really have a problem with that really, but then it just like never, besides people being like, yeah, no, we're still going to follow you, nothing really has changed for us, like it never is dealt with again. And so you're like, okay, well, why did you lie and do all this, Michael? And then he gets told at the end,
Corbin at all?
Yeah, like, well, why did you even make this thing? Because, and he tells him like, well, because we wanted to manipulate basically the forces of bad to use the Starstone treasures to open a portal so we could protect you better by coming back into your land. Like, why didn't you just like cut Calidus out? And Michael, why didn't you lead Corbin around to get the Starstone treasures like right when he was born to open up the portal to like why did you use evil to find and open this gate? It's just like weird to me that he would just do that if the whole goal was to get the Ben Elam out, because certainly if his goal was to protect Elion's like favored creation, humans, they certainly like slaughtered hundreds of
And like,
thousands.
why put them in danger
Yeah,
to do
en
that?
route to that goal, you know, it was
Yeah,
just weird
it seems
way to
kind of
accomplish it.
well, and like, I think one of the things that I'm not super clear on, and maybe you can explain this to me, I just didn't really get it through the text, is like, in how much danger were Elion's favored creation? Like,
Right.
I don't understand. Like, it's like maybe
Like
some,
the only reason
but
that
like,
they were in danger was from the Benny Lim.
well, like, because he's like, well, I want the Benny Lim to like come in here and like patrol, basically. You know, that's essentially like they're not here. I want them here to protect everybody. And
Michael.
it's like, and it's yeah, that's what Michael.
Yeah,
was saying.
totally.
And it's like, okay, but like, from what though? Like, I mean,
right.
Like,
and then he also has this weird thing where he like doesn't really care about they're kind of like flippant with the lives of humans at the end of the last book, and it seems like
everybody
they're gonna have this
in this
motivation.
entire series is flippant with the lives of humans, dude.
Yeah,
like,
straight up. But yeah, he like mentions like the whole like straw soldiers that distracted Veratus, and he's like, yeah, the humans are kind of that, but it's like not really, because the humans are like put in this weird position of like a distraction so the Benny Lim can actually come in and then actually protect them. Like they're not. That wasn't a very good analogy at all. I felt like when we finally learned the true plan, which wasn't any deeper than they just wanted to be there standing next to them to protect them, but by doing so also managed to bring forth all of evil to destroy them in one fell swoop, I guess. I don't know, it seemed weird.
And it's weird because like I feel like it would have been a lot more graceful if Corbin had been like at the very end had been like, I don't trust you guys because like your motivations don't make any sense to me.
And he kind of does that by rejecting their offer to lead them.
But he's mostly just like, I'm sick of you controlling me.
That's all.
Which is like
really
a
doing.
totally different thing. Like that's
right.
And it's like, well, you're not going to acknowledge like how weird and roundabout this entire situation has been. Like this is
right.
Weird. Like
and
it
we
would have
barely pulled that one off, guys. We barely won. And that was like,
and how many people died?
Yeah, and how many people? And if you wouldn't have, like, now you are now in a slightly better position to defend us. But like, there's also untold number of Kadashim that still need to be like hunted down, that are like free to roam the lands and continue slaughtering. So it's like, it seems like the Ben Elim were just like feeling kind of worthless and like created the scenario where the humans needed to be protected because they super didn't before Michael started messing around with Destiny.
Was Calidus and company already? Did Michael know that Calidus was trying to find all of the Starstone treasures?
The only reason that Calidus was like trying to do that was because of these.
Right. I know. I'm trying to like find it out here. Like,
yeah, me too, dude. But like, yeah, no, he started the whole thing off, and it seems like so weird. Like, why wouldn't he just why wouldn't he like go get together with Gar back in the day when he like formed the Jihar and be like, hey guys, as opposed to like helping the Bright Star, forget that whole thing. You guys are going to be the like find the 7 treasures people, and you're going to like open the portal so we can totally avoid the whole Kadashim coming over. We'll just pull the Benny Lim over. We'll avoid this whole war. If that's the goal, truly, you know.
And dude, honestly, like I would have been totally fine with Corbin being chosen actually by
me
Elion.
too.
Like we didn't need to do any of
not at all. It just got
and that's
weird.
just my personal preference as a reader, but like prophecies aren't always bad. Like prophecies are actually okay. Like it's fine. Like I don't mind it. Like especially like I mean because okay, so I think that one of the main complaints about prophecies is that like it kind of like puts the story on rails. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like
there is a destiny behind everything happening. Yeah.
But you can play around with that without like completely negating like the entire thing after like 2.5 books.
Totally.
But I mean,
I feel like it was done for more like shock and awe, and then to kind of subvert the trope. But in doing so, just made less sense as for the whole story.
I was literally expecting Elion to show up. Like
Me too.
And that was like, I was like disappointed. I was just like,
Me too.
It's pretty lame that like, is he even real? You know what I mean?
I don't
like,
know. Is Michael like him? Because like it doesn't. You think it would be like
about that? Yeah,
Elion and Azeroth like struggling together in eternal statue mode, but like no, it was like Michael and them. So like, is Elion even real? I don't really know.
I like the theory that that Michael is Elion.
Yeah, that just kind of popped into my mind, but like
So like, why wouldn't
I
he?
don't know. He's certainly not all good.
So that whole thing, and then like the statues, I was like just really underwhelmed. Like I don't know. I guess it kind of works in the sense that like it wouldn't make sense for Michael to like kill Azeroth like with like a knife or something. I
Right,
guess
right. Like,
like
is he defeating like all of evil
right,
now?
if I was writing these books and I was writing the climax, I would be like, how can I avoid like putting a knife into Satan? You know what I mean? Like
right. Make up statues, become a tree
silly.
or something.
Yeah, but it's still kind of underwhelming. Just kind of like after all of that, and then it's just
Totally.
like, they're statues now.
I didn't even put this like the details of Calidus's death into the recap, but I want to go over them now because they're a little odd, but I do kind of like it. Earlier in the book, Corbin goes into the spirit realm and he like plops out, like plinks into spirit realm existence. And we never really learn the mechanism how Corbin like goes in and out of the spirit realm. He just like tries hard sometimes and then he shows up.
Well, and he's also
there.
like kind of like invited into it at one point too. I think like yeah, like
and then he like ran magics him in there one time with like a potion. So there's different ways you can get there, I guess. So he pops into existence in front of this questionable character named Viathan, who's in the spirit realm, who seems extremely powerful and keeps referring to himself as the Eater of Souls. And then he gets saved by the Ben Elim. And then later, Corbin meets up with Calidus he like basically drags Calidus into the spirit realm and wondering what to do with Calidus. He's like, what should I do with you? And then he's like, and he like defeats Calidus, and Calidus is like, sniveling on the ground in front of him, being like, no, like we can like maybe work together and stuff. And Corbin's like, nah, man, not even at all. And then he like basically just like whoops him all the way up this river and arrives at this lake that he popped into existence that he knows contains this soul-eating Viathan creature. And then he like calls out like, hey, Viathan.
This is like one of the craziest sentences you've ever said in your life. Like,
I know.
I'm just like trying to listen as like an outside observer almost. Like it's the things that you're saying. Sorry, go ahead.
He calls out, hey, Viathan. Viathan shows up and he's like, are you hungry? And Viathan's like, for a soul? Of course. And then Calidus is his broken form is given to Viathan, and Calidus is like, no. Like, obviously, that's like one of the worst things that Corbin could like stumble into for having be his fate. And then he's like, Calidus is basically like given to this Viathan person and taken away into the swamp, I guess, to have his soul eaten. And that's how he goes, which seemingly is like a pretty nasty death. Like, it was cool as a way that he didn't just get like knifed and killed. It was like, oh no, he got some real good comeuppance. But like, who the hell is Viathan? Like, is there like a neutral party in the spirit world? Like, this whole spirit world place and concept is super confusing to me. Is there actually good and bad, or is it just like a names, places, who, what, when sort of situation? Is there other creatures that don't represent either one of the good or bad parties? Because at first we kind of think it's like a two-party system in the spirit realm. There's like good and bad, but then there's like Viathan, who's like bad, but also like maybe just a trickster, more like Loki, like not like good or bad, but kind of a little questionable sometimes and eats souls from time to time, I guess. Maybe he's Elion. I don't know.
I don't know. Those kinds of sequences, not even just in this series, but in most books, like I just always kind of tune out a little bit. Like whenever there's like a dream sequence or like this other dimension sequence, or like it's like there's not enough time to like explain like what's actually happening, and it's just like this ambiguous kind of like, what the fuck was that, like kind of thing. And it's just it sucks because sometimes those things are really important. But yeah, for me, I don't know, man. Like I think, but I agree with you that Calidus's death was like weird. It was like kind of satisfying.
Yeah.
But also
okay, I was just thinking to myself, like, how does Corbin get into the spirit realm again? And I forgot. He dies at the end of this book. Corbin dies at the end of this book and is in the spirit realm, gives Viathan it's
like a Harry Potter thing. Like it's
totally.
It's
and he's like, hey, Viathan, he trades him. He's like, hey, I'll trade you like my living body again. Like, can you make me live if I give you this soul? And Viathan's like, oh, for sure. And then Calidus gets dragged off, and Corbin then wakes up after getting like gutted, and he's like, I'm back, yo. And then like everyone lives happily. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, he dies, and then Viathan, I guess, who has control over life and death and can make deals, I guess, with souls and stuff. So maybe he is Elion. I have no idea. who this Viathan
But
character
like,
is,
why
but
not see? Like, yeah, that theory works, kind of. But like,
kind of.
but
But
do
it's
like,
like weird that he lives in a
do all
swamp.
these
Elion's
people?
a swamp dweller.
But like, do people on either side like share this space? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like that's what it's like. Sometimes they're in there, sometimes they're not. Are they like segregated? You know what I mean? Are they like
Totally.
I don't understand. And like when McKean and Fidelay are together in the afterlife or whatever, is Fidelay's husband there? You know what I mean? Like
Right. Yeah, they see each other and he like drops his
like,
sword and it becomes part of the bridge and he like runs across and they they hug. But yeah, where's her husband? Is it weird? Some weird threesome?
his name was Aquilus. Like that guy
Aquilus,
was
the
totally
king.
married and like in love with Fidelay. You know
That's
what I
so
mean?
right.
Like like is he just like, oh, I didn't
The
know
new
while I
love
was
gets
dead, you
ousted.
guys like got together. Like that's great, I guess. Like I was just here
Yeah.
waiting for you. You know, like
I'm so glad you brought your new squeeze into the spirit realm.
yeah, the
Finlay.
spirit realm stuff just like definitely, and that's what I mean by like tuning out is just it's like there's too many. It's like the plot's moving too fast and there's too many questions for this. So it's like I mean it really is like in Deathly Hollows when Harry goes to platform 9 3/4 and he's just like ghost Harry kind of, and like Dumbledore's there, but they're able to have like this like totally like corporeal
Coherent
experience
conversation.
with each other. And then like there's like this weird Voldemort like baby thing, and like
Right.
and like it's just like this weird kind of
It's like representative of the Crux and Harry, right?
it's like that's yeah, but it's like that scene in like the Matrix Reloaded where like they go into that room with like all the TVs in it, you know, and it's just like this kind of like
Totally.
nonsensical, like incoherent conversation of like, I guess all this makes sense. We're kind of at the end of this now, so I'm kind of like
Vis-a-vis, ergo, vis-a-vis.
but I feel like that with like the spirit realm in this series where it's like the momentum of everything that's happening in like the real world is kind of like pushing like all the questions that you have like in the moment kind of like outside, but then by the time you finish it you're just like, well, what about all this other, who was that, like what, like where did he take Calidus, you know what I mean? Like yeah,
Right.
he drug him away, but like
ate his soul, but like where does
like
his soul go?
like,
He's
what
in
do
the
you
soul
mean?
realm.
I don't know.
Yeah, like
but that's I can't, I guess it's kind of nitpicky, but like I don't know, not really. Like I want to know those things.
And also I think, like if you ever watched Firefly.
I've only seen a couple episodes of it. I need to watch all of it.
Oh man, I mean there's only one season and it's just so good. It's like classic.
I've heard it's really like
classic.
cozy.
Yeah, one of the writers in there has a really like brilliant line, and he says, I forget the name of the bad guys that he creates, but basically there's this scourge of like deep space living baddies who have like become cannibals, and they're like everyone is terrified of these like insane space people, and the writer of the Firefly said they're the best enemies that he never created because you never actually see them.
Yeah,
they're always just like around and everyone's terrified when they are, and that sort of bad guy has so much power. Like this, like you can't see it or quantify it, you can't stab it with a sword, you can't fight it really even, it's just fear incarnate. And as soon as Azeroth joins the scene and like pops out and starts fighting people, and what in book 2 or something, he like Corbin gets taken in front of Azeroth. I don't know.
That was a pretty cool
Azeroth
scene,
lost.
by the way.
It was cool.
That was a pretty cool scene. I liked it.
It was cool, but it was just like he just lost all sorts of power, like
it's like when Kylo Ren takes his mask off in the first or not the first, but in episode 7, I
don't know, it just doesn't it removes their power.
I understand 100% what you're saying. Like I think it would have almost been better if Azeroth had never been involved, if they're not going to involve Elion, and if they are going to involve Azeroth, it would have been cool if Elion showed up and there was like this giant god battle in the sky or something like that.
Totally.
But like going like that halfway in, it kind of like neuters Azeroth a little bit. Like
yeah, he's just like, okay, just like a tough baddie.
Well, and see, that's the thing. Speaking of tough baddies, I want to talk about the giants a little bit.
Okay.
So like the reason I say the tough baddie thing is like I feel like the giants were just kind of like just bigger humans. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I think that what was cool about the giants is that they seem to have like a much more thorough understanding of the Banished Lands and the Starstone treasures, and like they just seem to like be a little bit more competent with like the information that they had, which I liked a lot. I thought that was really cool. I do think we could have maybe, I don't know, like I feel like they could have just been cooler. You know, like at the end of the
Yep.
day, like they go down pretty much the same way as like humans do. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like,
Yeah, you get
all
Coral
right,
and he
like
just
what's
jumps up on their back and slits their throat left and
exactly?
right. You
Yeah,
know, it's like she's tiny, but she's like small and effective.
I want to ask you your feelings about Alcyon though, because I think we had talked about Alcyon, and it's interesting
Yeah.
that it kind of like it really did turn out how we had planned Alcyon. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty cool, you know. I mean, like, and another thing that I really like about Alcyon is like the dynamic between him and Veratus is really cool too, because like they had always been a little tight, you know, like they'd always seemed to have like this kind of like unspoken understanding with each other,
Yeah.
and I really liked
They
in
could see
this
the good in
fourth
each
book.
other, sort
Yeah,
of
I
thing.
liked seeing them interact and deal with stuff together when they both kind of like had stuff on the line, and just I don't know, I think I liked Alcyon like in every book, and it would have been cool to like have some dedicated like Alcyon chapters throughout this entire series, you know.
Yeah. And
But it's like Alcyon and Nether should have had chapters,
yeah,
not
yeah.
not like Tuchel and like that like Tuchel,
Yeah.
like why does Tuchel have chapters, you guys?
And more to your point, like the giants were very much in this book. They were a big part of it, but like
Sure.
kinda like they also could have been like totally removed from the book and like besides being like the standalone people or they stand in for like people who know things about this country's past and like are responsible for all the ruins and stuff. They weren't really that important. Like, yeah, they turned the tide of a couple battles by like showing up surprisingly, just being like, we decided to fight for good. Here's all a bunch of like giants
Yeah.
on bears. You know, it was like a cool idea, but I don't know. They just kind of felt like underused a little. You know?
So I don't know if you want to talk about this because it's pretty kind of messed up, but I thought it was pretty cool, especially because we saw ants in the first book, but like Lycos
Yeah,
being devoured by ants.
and like
That
Nether's
was
like half of his army.
that was like one of the cool. I mean, like Lycos in particular, because of like the what happened with him and Fidelay. I was like, this is really satisfying because like,
That made me cry.
dude, it was really intense.
I just
like it was,
McKean like he just gets just short end of the stick every time that he finally finds love and like actually like while it was a little
yeah.
weird that they have this weird love and like you know who
No,
gets
it makes
Fiddler in
sense.
the
It was
spirit
fine.
realm, I
It was
did
fine.
like
Yeah.
their
But
progression
that
as
was more of a
characters,
joke than anything. Like I think that
but it's still
Fidelay
kind
and
of weird,
McKean,
you know.
yeah,
But yeah, when she sacrifices herself like for him, like
yeah,
it made me it
yeah.
hit me in the feels.
I know, man. It's really
Yeah.
brutal.
So I did really like that, but like I don't if I was writing these books, I don't know if I would have had them both die. Like we really get no old guard living. We get like
No,
Gar, Makeen,
yeah.
Brenna, like
Oh yeah,
all
Brenna
old
died.
guard.
I forgot about that too. Yeah.
Yeah. We just kind of need like another sad event to culminate, you know?
What did you think about Brenna dying?
It was again like
It felt a little
goodish,
lackluster to me. I'm just gonna say,
lackluster.
like,
Yeah, like
yeah, I don't
I
know.
agree that like if you were to say like should she have died at the beginning, I would have been like yes. But then like the way it all happened, she didn't really die for a purpose. Like she dies, but like Cohen's right there to finish the
Mhm.
incantation to destroy the and it's like it was just kind of like a final way that Calidus can be like a bad guy.
Sure.
Like his final comeuppance was to just kill her and be like ha ha ha, and you're like oh darn that sucks and like we'll all like cry about it and it was sad, but I think it almost might have been more powerful if she would have like lived on and gone back to her cottage or something, you know, and like been the wizened old lady in the forest once again, you know.
I'm gonna change gears just a little bit here, but
Sure.
I typically I don't really weigh in too much on romance very much when we're reading like epic fantasy and stuff like that. But I will say, I think Veratus and Cohen just being hinted at is really lame because of the amount that they thought about each other. Like it's like just
Yeah.
pull the trigger on that, man. Like why not just like the world's ending? Like it just seemed weird and like I want to say like a little prudish almost, where it was just like, can we just have these characters smash? Like that'd be really
Right.
cool.
Like I get it not happening when Cohen was still and captured. Like she was captured. She
Obviously,
shouldn't have
I'm
been
just
falling
saying
in
they
love
should
like
have
Bradis.
they
But no,
should
no,
have
I'm
had like
with
an
you.
Arya Gendry moment. They should have found
Yes.
a broom closet or something. You know what I mean?
Totally, totally.
I
That
know
didn't
that
end in one like poisoning the other with like sleeping pills, like Makeen and Fiddle.
but you know what I'm saying though? It's just kind of
One
like
hundred percent.
it's like Gwyn can obviously do a pretty fairly compelling romance. I mean, like Fidelay and McKean was like believable. It was cool.
He does struggle romance well. Two people going through hardship
Sure.
and bringing him closer. Yeah, but
Like
romance.
I don't know. Like let's throw like I mean, because like Veratus kind of like rides up and he's like, "Hey, I want to join you guys." You know what I mean? And it's like
totally like
and it's like just kind of implied, really. Like, I mean,
Yeah, and they
it's shown a lot more through like how they, they're thinking about each other a lot.
right.
More, I would argue more. Veratus is thinking about Cohen more than Cohen is thinking about Veratus.
Probably, yeah, because he was
maybe a
like
little bit.
free most of the time that they were hanging out, and she was like
But it's still
captive.
happening. Yeah, it's still happening.
Totally.
But I don't know. What do you think? Do you agree?
It was all right. I mean, the
Yeah.
story was fundamentally like not a romance.
Sure, that's a really good point. Yeah.
Did I have a problem with him throwing it in there? No. Did it seem a little forced sometimes? Yeah. Could it have been better used since it was thrown in there? Totally.
That's what I'm saying. Like, because even in like the second book, when Cohen is taken by Nether's forces, or Rin's forces, I should say. I don't even remember at this point.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Is it Rin's forces? And Veratus is
yeah,
just
it's Rin and Calidus, and then
Veratus
yeah.
is like, man, I admire this girl so much. Like, just her tenacity, her
Totally.
gumption, or whatever. And I felt like I was just like, okay, like, of course, like our
Sure.
character falls in love immediately with like the only other girl around right now. So
Yeah.
sure, but
He's
then
like
it
the
actually
exact same as Corbin's love interest, who has like the same name also. Like,
You know,
Corlin.
maybe it's because I'm reading Dragonlance right now, but like, if you think that there was some insta love happening in these books, you should go read Dragonlance, because
Oh yeah.
wow, there are people that know each other for like a day and they're like madly in love with each other.
It's like fate.
Gilthanas and Silvara, if anybody's curious about who I'm talking about. But yeah, I think maybe I'm a little bit desensitized to it because I've been reading Dragonlance, but
Jaded from Insta Love.
yeah, insta love is a weird trope. Like,
It is a weird trope.
because I think
I-
it's kind of cool sometimes, but it's also, and you know what, it's not totally unrealistic too, because people do really get really infatuated with each other really quickly in
Very
real life.
quickly.
Like, that's a thing. Like, so I'm not ready to like throw that out the window. But when I was reading the end of this, I just I don't know. I just wanted them to like really get together instead of like, that's just
Totally.
me.
We
That's
didn't
just me.
really get. No, I'm with you. We didn't really get like a satisfying love ending. Like, we have Corlin and Corbin, and they're like obviously together. Cool.
Everybody couples up in like
Yeah,
a very,
everybody-
yeah.
And then like the one that I
Except for the dead
really didn't
people.
like
Sorry.
was all of a sudden Brenna, when she loses like the old guy Heb or whatever.
Heb, oh my gosh.
Where
yeah.
all of a sudden she's like,
It
maybe
was like the
had a
saddest
thing
thing
with
that's ever
him.
happened in the entire
Yeah.
series. Like,
Or like,
yeah,
I thought that
remember
you guys were like barely acquaintances, but I guess he was like your magic buddy that you were in love with, I guess. Like, that was the one that I really didn't feel. Speaking of love, one of the things that I really did like love was the survivor of the series, Budai, the dog, who ends up mating with Storm and producing a bunch of puppies.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I'm so glad Buddha was just like around.
He gets with the Wolfen.
Hell yeah.
Storm, and ends up
Hell
creating.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And then there's another, like, again, there's just so many little teeny scenes that like weren't mentioned to be thrown into the recap or anything. And I don't honestly remember who this little guy is king of. Maybe he's king of the place that Corbin and company escape to in book 2. There's like a king that escapes. They get up to his land. I forget where it is. It's a dun a cell something, and then they like escape up there, and then he sets off to go get Cohen back, I believe, and do all that, and then that land gets taken over by Veratus, who's still working for Nether at the time, and there's like a boy king that escapes with Adana.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure that boy king is the one who does this, but he pulls a really cool move at the end when Nether's trying to leave. He finds there's like a nest of dragons that they find in the forest at the end of like these tunnels, and this little boy king like via what is he? Oh, he steals one of their eggs and then goes running basically into the middle of Nether's like fleeing army. And then like right before he gets hit by Nether's army that's running away with these 3 huge dragons pursuing him with the egg, he throws the dragon into Nether's like army and then like veers off sideways, and then Nether's army gets like crunched with these dragons. It was a pretty cool scene.
Again, another really cool scene from a character that I felt really distantly connected to. You know what I mean? Like, that's
like right now I cannot remember if he's that boy king or if he's the boy king that escaped with Makeen way back when he got to the first town. Was it Makeen? Yeah, it was Makeen and his sword brothers from the Gadrai that
Right. It
helped the
was from
Boy
the
King
second
escape
book.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that Boy King or the one that was up north with Idana. I don't know.
Um, I wanted to get your take on the Starstone treasures. Man, like it seems like just the cauldron and like the goblet to a certain extent, but like, what do the other ones like do?
Do I don't
Yeah, like
really
they didn't.
know.
I felt like that was kind of like a missed opportunity. Like,
The spear opens all hidden doors if you throw it angrily in a room. That's one of
what I
its
was saying though
powers.
is like we got all of these. I think it would have been pretty cool to like actually locate them if like all the factions kind of like did have one and they were like useful. They had like powers and stuff and
Yeah, like the torque
like
was actually
because
like other than
it's
just long life.
well yeah, but like they're just I feel like they're just there to be collected. You know what I mean? I
Totally.
understand that they do things. Like I'm not saying they do nothing.
Right.
What I'm
Drink from
saying
the
is
cup, it
they're
makes
not
you like heightened.
it's not really like utilized as much, you know what I mean? Like,
No.
or at least as much as I feel like it could have been. They mostly are just there to be collected. They're MacGuffins. They're like it's funny too because I think we talked about this in the episode before this, but like there's like this part where I think it was in like the beginning of the third book when they're up in Domain and they're they're like they've got the cauldron and they're like, all right, let's use this thing, and they're like, we got to have all the stuff, we got to have all of them,
Yeah,
and
we
then
have all of them, yeah.
somebody's like, why is it like that?
Yeah. And
And I
like
think I mentioned that I think that's called lamp shading though. It's like when the author like kind of nods to the audience is like, I know that's kind of stupid, but like
right.
I'll
I
have like
know
one
this
of my
is kind of
character
stupid.
I'll have one of my characters kind of like say how stupid it is and then like we can
But
move
like
on together.
Alcyon for a good chunk of these books is like fighting with the Starstone axe, and it's just like a regular axe that he's fighting around. Whereas like the cup, you drink from it, and like Wraith has like
Sure.
basically he becomes like Daredevil who doesn't lose his vision. He like has heightened senses because like long life. He's like all strong, super reflexes and stuff. But like so that's kind of cool. But did they use that to then like create an army of heightened reflexes people? No, just like a couple generals who could like move fast, so Makeen could have some like actual like battles. People could actually face off against him. But like Alcyon should have been going into battle with like a axe that stole the light from the room, or just like
Sure.
this, that
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
just electrified people, or had a flaming sword or
It
something
caused a
other than just
storm
like
or something
need
like
to get
some
them
crazy
together.
shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cause a storm. Yeah, like
Yeah.
or else they're just MacGuffins.
Yeah. I
Totally.
mean, it kind of reminded me of Akatar, honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
like
yeah. We're like on this laundry
I
list of
mean,
like
it
collecting
really is
stuff.
similar to Akatar in that
Yeah,
there is literally a
a
cauldron, you know.
cauldron. Yeah, and
So
like let's not forget that the entire reason that Elion apparently is absent without leave is because like he allowed the Starstone treasures to like be come into existence in the first place, and that started the whole like first war between the giants and the men, I think. And then he was like, "Man, I'm really sad about that. I'm leaving."
which is funny because I would totally read about that. Like,
That
let's
sounds
get one of
man.
those. Like, if John Gwynne was like, I'm writing a series about like the Starstone treasures and like these big wars and stuff, I'd be like, all right, let's see it.
Dude,
That sounds pretty
the
cool. Like, that sounds a
the
lot cooler than
only
this.
cool like giant like battle that we got was like the first one
In the
where
second book.
it was the second book, yeah, where he invents
Yeah.
the shield wall and like
Oh
withholds
no, that
the
was the first
drag
book. Yeah,
rush.
no,
Is that the first
that
book?
was the
Yeah,
first book. That was a
it
cool
withholds the
scene.
like drag rush. Super
Yeah,
cool scene where you get
yeah.
these like, oh, it's like mountain. You're like, awesome. We're gonna have some really cool battle fights, and then with the giants, and then like that's really the only time that we see them like actually be awesome in battle. Besides like coming to the aid in a battle that's already like going,
Yeah, like I lost track multiple times of like exactly what the Starstone treasures were.
Yeah, and where
You
they're
know what I
at.
mean? Yeah, and like
And
what kind of weapons they even were.
totally. And there's like this whole like sub arc I didn't even touch on, which is like when Calidus goes to find or no, excuse me, when Lycos goes to find the Torque up on
Sure.
the island near where Alcyon like grew up or whatever, and there was like this island that like nobody was allowed to go on because dark magic lived there. Turns out there was like some like fabled long lost clan of giants living in that like enclave, and the like one of them, again, we just didn't have enough time with these characters for me to even kind of understand what their purpose was, but they show up at the end, and I think that the like queen of them was supposed to unite all, like apparently at one point all of the giant clans were united under one, and like that clan has been like holding out in this little cave on this island for like a certain time to like come back into existence and reunite all the giant clans, which is like kind of like vaguely mentioned actually happens at the end because the giants come and help when before they weren't going to, and it's
There's
like
a little bit of
Creed goes
unification
up.
going
It's
on. Like,
totally.
sorry,
It's
not
just
to interrupt you, but
no,
like
no, you're good. It's just so confusing.
isn't it only like two clans in this book that kind of like put aside their differences?
Yeah, I think the other
Like,
ones get destroyed.
oh yeah,
Maybe not. I don't know because there's the Jotun at the end who are like the biggies. There they got the bears. They're the bear riders. And then I know that there's kind of like I know Alcyon is like the last of his crew, but I think the last of his clan. But I think the giants that they find on this island are like long lost his clan, maybe.
hmm.
And like a member of his clan was supposed to unite them, and that kind of happens. There's like this weird like giant sub unification plot that's like very not gone into very deep. Uh so again, this this story is littered with cool characters. It's littered with cool storylines. It's littered with cool arcs, all sorts of great things. It's just littered. There's too many, and
Yeah,
I
littered
cannot
is a really good word for it.
I can't focus on any one of them, and so they all kind of lose their weight because I'm just kind of over here struggling to pick up all these pieces to the Jenga tower, but I can't possibly hold them all together.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as we start kind of wrapping up and giving our final thoughts on this series, like I don't think I'm going to reread this. I would definitely recommend it to people though that really like battles and really like epic
Yes.
fantasy and really like lots and lots of characters, like big casts of characters and more of an ensemble kind of situation.
Would you
like if you
compare
want
it to Game of Thrones? Would you put it in that sort of realm? No, me neither.
I wouldn't compare it. That's just me personally. I don't know what I would really.
Yeah, I want to say almost like Canius, just because I was like equally confused going through
Maybe,
those books.
yeah.
I read a Reddit post that made me laugh. That was like, "This is like Canius all over again," because it was complaining about all the. I was like, "Oh."
I think that I have a lot of similar complaints about this that I do with Lycanius. Like chief among those is just me having like kind of a general like lack of immersion and sense of place, like while I'm reading it, and then like
being told growth, not shown it.
I think that this series makes a lot more sense than Lycanius. I think James Islington was like way more ambitious than.
Can you imagine if there was time travel in this? Oh my
exactly.
gosh.
Like I'm just saying, like James Islington was like not saying that John Gwynne wasn't tackling some good themes here. I mean, like the idea of like the greater good and like what that really means, and like what is the line of like how many people we can sacrifice for like it's a good thing to explore. I think it's really cool. I think he did a pretty good job at it. I mean, I think with Lycanius, Islington seemed to be trying to explore the ideas of determinism or like free will. That was really cool too. But I think both series it's throwing a lot of mud at the wall to try to get a picture formed.
Yes.
Like it's a lot. It's so
like
I think
saying it. Yeah.
I think that this 4-book series would have been a pretty awesome trilogy. Like I think it would have been a very good trilogy if it had fewer POVs. But then again, too, I mean, like, I'm an author. A lot of people listening are authors. Like, this is the vision that John Gwynne had to the point that he wanted it published, and
totally, and they're wildly successful.
It also, I can kind of understand it being 4 books in the sense that a lot of these skirmishes, like it's like this is not just a regular war. Like this is there's like that whole aspect of it too. Because every time I'm like,
or is it?
Well, I mean, what I'm saying though is like this is like a god war. You know what I mean? Like
right.
there are a lot more. There's a lot more at play here than just like a border skirmish or like a
right. Every faction is involved.
Like, there has to be a lot of fighting with this, and there has to be a lot of like maneuvering and all of that. So it makes sense that there's so much of it, but it did start to feel a little bit like repetitive. Like it's just like, here's another fight, people get captured. Here's another fight, everybody dies except for like all of the antagonists. Here's another fight, like we just lost a character from the first book.
We have some cool like things like tactics being used, like the shield wall. We got our archer groups for the first time. We've got some flanks, some hammer anvil, some surprises, some betrayals, the ants. But
the hay warriors at the top of that hill.
The hay warriors, but it was like just enough, because there's a lot of battles in these books, and I felt like they could have been a little bit more like, if we're gonna battle, let's battle. Like let's get a little bit deeper into it. Like in my opinion, the entire last book could have and kind of should have maybe been that last battle, maybe.
Interesting.
Like if we're gonna battle, let's battle all the way.
Yeah. I feel like with this series, it was like I would be pretty stoked on it, and I'd be reading some cool stuff, and then I would get really bored for like a while, even with battles and stuff like that. And
right,
then,
because they weren't dynamic enough. They were just like, okay, we've been here.
And then it's almost like as soon as I was like, should I call Chad and say we shouldn't read? I would read another chapter that was just like, damn, that was a banger. Like that was crazy. Like that was so cool. And then I would be kind of like, it was like I was like in a desert, like just limping through into different oases. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh hell yeah, like I'm here. Like
You're
this refreshed. Is so cool. Yeah, and then it would just be like another kind of like sloggy bit,
blowing tumbleweed desert.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Like I've mentioned this on a few episodes now, and like I think that maybe like I've read a lot of epic fantasy. Chad's read a lot of epic fantasy. We're about to start reading Malazan, which I think is like a whole different bag of worms. Het worms.
Oh my god.
But
man, that's gonna be stuck in my head forever.
I am definitely like a little bit fatigued, I think, with like and this brings me to like my main issue with the entire series, and this is purely a personal taste thing. I'm not saying it was a bad idea to write it this way or objectively bad or anything like that, but I really took issue while reading with just the sheer amount of bloodshed in this series. Like it's egregious. Like it's egregious. So much. And it's like, and it's just the way that the characters feel about it, or the lack thereof, like it's just something about it. Like I just don't like it. Like I just don't like all of these battles and all of this death and all of these swords plunging and like impaling and just screaming and dying and just like, and then we've got like these kind of like other like dopey chapters where like birds are cracking jokes and like I don't know, like it just seems it's just like, and like these kids are like in love with each other's and and
like you said in an earlier episode, there's some tonal issues where you go from like almost like a young adult like adventuring while like struggling and running, and then all of a sudden someone's like tortured and killed, eaten by bears, and then like some like very graphic, explicit. And it's like there's a certain level of sexual assault. Yeah, there's a certain level of violence that like adds to the story, makes it more visceral, pulls you in emotionally.
Yeah, I'm not saying it shouldn't be there at all. Yeah, I'm not saying
turns you off, kind of. You know that like it harms it. It's more like a comedian who swears too much, and you're like you're using it as a crutch, and also it's an inappropriate one, kind of. I think
that's a good way of putting it. It's like watching a stand-up comedian use the F word in like 2 times a sentence. You know what I mean? And it's just like, dude. Oh man, you are really. This is a lot. Like this is a lot of this. And it's repetitive. So and it's like
sudden.
Yeah, very sudden. But that
like,
kind of works.
Like in the background, there's a staked person just screaming his brains out, and you're just like, man, like I get it, but still,
It's an interesting thing to think about too, because like Malazan is really messed up. Like there's a bunch of horrible things happening in those books. But it just feels different for me. Like it's a different vibe for me. And like even with Abercrombie's stuff, like there's a lot of killing. There's a lot of fighting in those. But it's just killing. But it's like it's the lens that you're looking at it through. It's the perspective. It's what's being thought. It's what's being said. It's how people are reacting to things. It's the context. It's the setting. It's so, there's so much that goes into it. And I feel like with Faithful and the Fallen, it's almost like this taken for granted thing. Like it's almost like this. It's like a given that in this battle, 50 people are going to get murdered with swords. Right. Like that means something. You know what I mean? Like dying from being impaled with a sharp piece of metal. Oof. Like that's, and doing that hundreds of times in a book. It just feels weird to me.
And there's like a few times where Corbin and company or Dath or somebody's like, man, I'm really just like killing a lot of people. And then he's like, oh, well, and then like, gotta do what I gotta do. And then he's just like scalping people the next one, like collecting. You're like, what? Like,
yeah. And with like no irony to it, no edge to it, like no. anything. So like, I mean, that is my. I think that's for me personally. Like, I didn't really like the multiple point of views and like all that stuff. Like, I can take up most of it. For me, it was just kind of like the banal, like just
Yeah,
endless
the
amounts of
non-story
dying.
aiding
Yeah,
violence.
but I guess it makes sense because of the nature of this kind of war. I'm not trying to sound like naive and like idealistic and,
It was
but
just oddly lighthearted
yeah,
in juxtaposition
sure.
sometimes,
I
you
think that's a
know.
good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I will say as finally like my final, and I know I've mentioned this before, but just to kind of put a period on the sentences, I really feel like there's a series of, and again, I think this stems back to them just being too many characters for us to spend the enough time for me to feel the growth. We get Veratus, who goes from like young, kind of like unblooded, like helper friend to Nether, who like is swearing his allegiance as like brothers, they're both young, to like this wizened like master strategist known of his men, can like fight him one battle in book 2. You get the crows who go from nothing to full on sentient creatures. We get Cohen, who by the time she's leading the escape from Drasil, she's throwing like vials of like oil onto Kadashim and like muttering words under her breath and lighting them on fire. It's like she's got like spells. I guess she learned those with Brenna when she was like escaping through the woods and she was learning to heal, but still it seems like, man, she's got like entire incantations memorized, I guess. You know, Corbin, he wasn't so much unearned growth. He did like train every day. He did the dance and stuff. Like that one was, I feel that one. Though him taking out like Sumer, you know, that guy
Yeah.
did that for like 50 years. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
Corbin's been doing it for 6 months. Like, I don't know.
And he's not chosen by Elion. There's
And he's
nothing.
not
He's just
right.
some dude. And I think
He's
that's what,
just some dude.
and I think that that's like another thing too that kind of like irked me about that whole like this prophecy not even
Right.
being real thing. It's like, well, that would have really aided along like how amazing Corbin is at
Right. Your story
everything.
made sense. You had an out.
Like yeah, but now it's just like he's just like this like 19-year-old who's like
Right.
literally the best swordsman in the world for no reason.
Right.
For
Right.
just
Because like
because.
Gar,
Like,
the
I don't buy
horse
it.
guy, raised him. You know?
I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
Nope.
I would have
I
bought
don't
it.
buy it
I
either.
actually would have swallowed that pill if it had been given to me by Aelion, you know.
Right,
But
right. Well said. Ooh, that
yeah,
was
man.
juicy. That was
But
very
like,
well said. Again,
yeah.
like also like the passage of time, right? It kind of gets like thrown in our
Oh
face just so
god, yeah.
John Gwynne can kind of like be like, oh nope. Remember, I said this, when people are like, people seem to be popping up all over the desolate lands, like or banished lands or whatever, all the time. We like take some weeks to get to where
Like when Lycos
this
catches up to
torque is.
Fiddle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's just like all over the place. But
Ha
you notice these little one-liners where he throw like I remember there's this scene at the end of book 3 where Cohen is like reminiscing and she's like just kind of randomly she's like, man, it's crazy that it's been a year since the events at the beginning of this book. She says it not in those words obviously, but like since the event at the beginning of this book, she says it's like crazy that it's been a year. And when I read that, I was like, it has like a whole year in this one
Yeah.
book. Like I would have guessed like maybe a month or two,
Yeah.
you know, but nope, it's been a whole year, which is, in my opinion, just Gwen's covering his back. So someone's like, dude, how did they get like 50 kilometers, like a whole army, you know? And he's like, well, it's been a whole year. And you're like, oh, right. Okay. That one throwaway line you threw in there.
Well, I think Gwen's pretty good at like in the beginnings of chapters and stuff. He'll kind of be like, you know, like 10 days passed, and then they.
Yeah,
you know,
you're not wrong.
He does do that.
Maybe
like,
I'm reaching for that complaint. As we wrap up here, do you think the hand of Elion was at play here the whole time? Kind of as is hinted.
No.
You know, because you don't.
No.
I don't know what I think. I wanted to disagree with you just for the sake of disagreeing with you, because it would be more interesting to be like, because like Mike Hill's even like, well, you know, I didn't give him like all of the prophecy, but I basically wrote it, but like not word for word. I just kind of gave him the ideas. So maybe Elion's hand was like at play there, and like,
No,
you know, random things like people stumbling onto the Starstone treasures happen. So maybe there's some Elion like divineness, but like, I don't know. I think this story is more a point of like, even divineness aside, good can still rise up and overcome evil. I think maybe that's more of the point than like there's a hidden hand at play of destiny here.
No, I mean, like, I think that
so
really
I think
works.
I agree with you.
I think it really works to not have Elion in play at all, because to your point, you know, like it seems like these humans can really rise to the occasion. They don't
Right. They'll
necessarily
still
need
cheer
this.
Corbin
Right,
on. Yeah.
exactly. Like that's a really cool takeaway from this series for sure.
Like merit.
Like if his chosen people were really in that much danger, he probably would have interceded. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I want to believe that if indeed, if unless there's no Elion at all, and Azeroth is the only god, and he just sucks a lot, and like that'd be a
Right. But even
weird
though
like
Azeroth is
pantheon.
created by Elyon, Michael tells
Totally,
us.
yeah, exactly.
So
So
like
yeah, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that this does seem to be kind of a story about humans' ability to kind of like unify and understand a threat when they see one and kind of like rise to a certain occasion.
right, overcome on the laurels of their own merit.
What I'm hazy about is like, what about all the people that were like, these are armies fighting armies? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like, what about all the like, like the humans that are fighting for?
Oh, it's a fatherless generation.
Like, I just don't understand. Like, it's like there's just like a bunch of humans that are fighting for Nether, and like, do they know that Nether is like in league with a bunch of demons? Like, or are they just like they're still Team Nether?
I mean, that's kind of like glanced at. So there's like at the final battle, there's somebody's brother is rushing the good
Yeah,
guys.
I remember
Who
this.
is
Yeah,
it? And then they basically are like, hey, and they end up like shaking each other's hands and
sure.
they join forces. He's like, you really expected me to kill my own brother, Calidus? Come on.
Exactly. But they've been killing people up until then anyway. That was why I thought that part was like,
They
okay.
were okay with the staking yesterday morning. Like,
Yeah, they were like impaling
yeah.
people, sure, but like if I run into someone I know on the battlefield, like
Right. Oh,
obviously
switching
I'm not gonna
sides.
like, yeah. But I don't know. Like it just seemed kind of like strange. But I mean you could really make that argument for like any epic fantasy. Right?
Yeah, but there's definitely going to be some like feuds moving forward into
Right,
this.
but it's like, why are all these
Definitely.
warriors in Stormlight Archive fighting for Sadius? Like, don't they understand how bad Sadius is? And it's
Right,
like, no,
right.
I do because I'm the reader. You know what
Totally.
I
These
mean?
guys
But
are
like,
just like squibs that
yeah,
have sworn
no,
allegiance.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna backtrack on that. That was a silly thing to say, Evan.
Oh,
Like,
I
come
mean,
on.
not necessarily though, because like at one point, after being told that like you're following the bright star, and then you see like literal demons incarnate your friends who were like Jihar moments
Sure.
before, then they are like eating children, and like the leader's like, oh, I remember when I first got my body, the taste of flesh. And you're like, okay, I'm definitely not fighting for the good forces anymore. There would be like an element of like some of the men would be like, let's get out of here.
I don't know, man. Maybe if I was fighting for an army and the leaders of that army turned into demons with like demon wings and stuff, I'd be like, man, if they find out I left, they're gonna be really mad.
Yeah, that would
So
be a scary thing
you
to
know what
run
I mean?
from. Well, to
Yep.
conclude, I think this is a really fun story. I think that John Gwynne, and this is obviously just my opinion, I think John Gwynne bit off a little more than he could than I wanted him to chew, let's put it that way, for
Sure.
this book. And I think it could have been aided by him just chawing a little less. But all things considered, I think this was a really, at the very least, this is a really good test, kind of like through out of the frying pan into the fire thing to put John Gwynn's writing skills through, because I really do think that we're going to get some amazing series from
Oh yeah.
John Gwynne as an author, just by like the difference in quality between the first book and the fourth one. It was just like, man, if all four of these books were the fourth one, I would have
Sure.
really liked
Yeah.
these books a lot more. So
I think I
I
can
have
agree with that.
high hopes for John Gwynne moving forward. This series might not be my favorite. I might not recommend it hugely. If you like really complicated, lots of POV, awesome, huge battles that are explained very well, I would recommend this to you. But, I think more generally speaking, there's better large scale, epic, high fantasy tales out there that are just done a little bit more skillfully. But like I said, if this is the, what's the word I'm looking for? The like, not the fire, when you put somebody through they run
The Crucible.
the crucible. Thank you. Yes. So this is like this book series was the John Gwynne's crucible of writing, and I think that he's arrived out the other side way better writer, and I'm really excited to see what the rest of his career has in store for him, because he's going to come up with some good stuff. I'm pretty certain of it, if he hasn't already.
I heard mixed things about this series going into it, but I've heard almost nothing but good things about the Bloodsworn series, which
And is that the next one?
that's the No, that's Of Blood and Bone. I think that's what that series is called. That's
because he has another one in this world, right?
In this world, but then there's the Bloodsworn saga or a series or whatever. The third book is coming out, I believe, next year, but it might be coming out in 2025. I think it was delayed because John Gwynne was dealing with some pretty intense family issues. And so people are very eagerly awaiting the third book in that series. And I really want to check it out. Like, and I think I said this, I don't know if I said this on this episode or the one before.
Does that one start with like Dread?
No, that's Of Blood and Bone. You're thinking, okay. I'm thinking of Hunger of the Gods, Shadow of the Gods.
Got it. Okay. I have the first
with
one.
With the really amazing covers.
The dragons.
Like, oh my God, those covers are so cool.
Some of the coolest covers I've ever seen, honestly.
But like I said, like I'm not turned off at all by John Gwynne in the least. Like I still want to read more of his books. I don't know if I mean I might read the next series that takes place in the Banished Lands. I
need
super
some time.
keen. I'm not super keen to I'm not running to go do it.
Not super keen.
But I could see us totally, once the third book in Bloodsworn comes out, I could see us totally like doing those on the podcast here.
I mean, the covers alone will get me to read them at some point, for sure.
I mean, I've read the first, because my brother started it, and he said he just didn't. Vaughn just doesn't finish books ever. Like, I never, like, if he doesn't finish a book, it's not because it's not good. It's because Vaughn never finishes books.
Right. And if those books are anything like some of the issues that I have with this series, like, those are not the books to read for a casual reader, you know? Like,
you know, it's funny. I mean, I read the first 15-ish pages of the first book in the Bloodsworn, and I really did enjoy it a lot. So I'm not. And that was before we started Faithful and the Fallen. So I'm sure it's pretty cool. But yeah, like I said, this series just, for me, it was really bloated. It was too long, too many characters. I wasn't super engaged with everything that was happening. But that's just kind of how it goes sometimes, you know?
Every series isn't for every reader.
Yep. But I mean, we did finish it, and Chad and I have started and not finished series on this podcast. So
absolutely,
it's an indication, you know. Just because we're not sitting here raving endlessly about it does not mean it's not worth reading at all. And if you're at the end of this episode, you've already read all 4 books with us.
And boy, can I not express how much gratitude I have for all of our listeners being with us. If there's anything that has helped me get through these series and kind of some of the doldrums, some of the parts that I was really struggling with it, just kind of a little bit lost, was the community of people reading these books with us and helping to motivate. That makes every book series, and especially a honker huge one like this one, I get so much more value out of it with everyone reading along. Cool. So thanks everyone for sticking with us through this. It's been great.
Yeah, we really appreciate you listening.
Yeah. And on that note of future cool things, I literally started the first Scholomance by Naomi Novik last night and finished it this morning. So I read it in just one night, busted it out, 300 and something pages, and I'm really into it. So make sure that you either go pick up those and start reading with us, or put it on the TBR, because it was pretty good, and I'm stoked to finish them.
Yeah, everybody, seriously, if this is a series that you really love and it's caused you a little bit of pain to hear us not loving it as much as you are, hey, that's what being in a community is all about, you know, no hard feelings or anything. Your taste is super valid, and you have your own reasons for liking this, and we have our own reasons for disliking some of it, but liking a lot of it. So just wanted to throw that out there, you know, Chad and I are not here to tear down any art or authors or stories or anything like that. But we do kind of rib it a little bit if we have some issues with it, because we are nerds at our very, very core. And if you're listening right now, you're a nerd too, and we love you.
We got to talk about our feels.
We do. But anyway, that is going to close the lid on the giant jar that is Faithful and the Fallen.
Happy I've done it. Happier to have it done.
Yeah, about there. I'm kind of feeling like that with Red Rising too.
Dude, man, yeah. It's
let's get it done.
Let's get it done, baby, man. Those first 3 were smashed through like a car accident, like a dumpster explosion. And this next one is just kind of smoldering. Oof,
it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot of woe with me too.
Yeah, it's very dark. But anyway, that's going to do it for us today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. And of course, happy reading.
Bye, everybody.